Do your thing.
Wait, why am I muted? No, I'm going to mute. Five, four, three. Okay, and we're live. So, welcome to episode 2 of the Horror Podcast. I'm Mike, and today I have a good friend of mine, and we've been friends for damn near 35 years or something like that, going back to like the late 80s, 87. Is my buddy Bill. So,
Hello.
say hey to everybody, Bill. And today, I want to continue with what we were doing from the previous podcast, which is the foundation, or what I feel is the foundation for horror and cinema, the universal classics. I want to talk today about 1931's Dracula with Bela Lugosi, directed by Tod Browning. I had an opportunity, and I think Bill did too, since the last episode, to sit down and watch the movie and give it some thought, with the more discerning eye. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And we hope that you enjoy it. So, welcome, Bill.
Hello. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, bro. Always good. So, let's get right into it. Um, you know, I think I spoke to you a little bit through the phone, and you said that you had done some research, and I was lucky in that I had one of those like box sets for the four Universal characters. So I
Yep.
don't know if you saw the same thing that I did. I saw they had that short documentary on Dracula. And this was the first, for people that are fans of horror, you may not know this because you're watching The Conjuring and you think that that's, horror, and it is, or you're watching, something more modern. But this movie, that really, 1931, I mean, that goes back 90 years.
Yes.
That's 90 years this year, 2021. 90 years ago, the first sound um, horror feature, supernatural feature was released, and it's the one that we're talking about now. I just think it's such an important movie. I really enjoyed it, watching it. Over the past week, I caught it in little pieces here and there. I didn't go through one sitting because I wanted to sort of digest what it was that we were looking at, and it still holds up in my book.
Okay. I went back and watched it as well, and it to me it's like two different movies. Um, it stands out. The first half stands out. It's the most scary part of it. But when you get to England and there's all that you could call it chamber room drama, it turns into a different movie. Almost as scary, but it's almost like it's not a horror movie. And it seems like it's two different movies, one and then the other. And for me, the first half is always the best for me.
I think that, and I mentioned this in the last episode because I talked about 1932's The Mummy with Karloff.
Okay.
And it reminded me, and I think you and I have talked about this also because we talk about horror and we talk about movies and books and, all sorts of things, of something I had heard Rob Zombie say. And I think it was also brought up in the documentary that this was so close to the era of silent film,
Yes.
that so many of these actors were just so over the top
Oh yeah.
their performance because they were trained in a format that didn't include dialogue.
Right.
So everything was this overly dramatic sense of, everything, because there would be text across the screen where, whereas now, you're actually speaking the parts, but they haven't really learned to dial it down. And
Right.
I thought that was, I was like, wow, that's an interesting point. I never thought about that. But then what I really loved about that, because I mean, some of these, the guy, like the guy who plays Renfield or Harker, they're just so flamboyant. It's like, it's ridiculously flamboyant. It really has no place in a horror movie. And I think, I think Zombie was saying it was something like, they were like these, closeted guys, that they just kind of hired to put in a horror film. But what I thought sort of made up for that was the fact of how Lugosi's performance sort of counterbalanced.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, Lugosi just comes in from the first scene and he's just alpha as fuck. Like every time he comes onto the screen, everything just stops. The pacing, the energy, that frenetic sort of thing. Oh, what's happening? Or why are you doing that? Oh, and he walks in the room and everything just hits like this dead silence, you
Heck
know?
yeah. All right. There's reasons for that. There's a lot to unpack in what you just said. So
Sure.
it's definitely just coming out of the silent era. The thing I found most interesting about it and what it made sense to me going back and watching it again was that most of the actors and the film itself was based on the stage production that Bela Lugosi was in.
Yeah.
So you can see them trying to fight through not only being trained for the silent era, but then also it looks almost like they're just doing a play, but they're muting it for film, right? So you watch Van Helsing and he barely moves, and Mina, she's only just moving her face, and she's not. You can tell she's not really used to emoting with her face. She should be emoting with her body, but she can't, right? And Lugosi though shows up, and he's the master at this emoting thing. He is, like you said, the showstopper, and he always was that from the time he was in plays and from his years doing Dracula on stage. So he is the magnet. The rest of them are sort of venerable actors, but not doing the same thing that Lugosi was. And you're right, he's alpha. He comes on the screen and everything changes. The only one that sort of meets him there with presence definitely is the guy playing Renfield.
Yeah.
Renfield is super good, over the top at being crazy, that expression and his body language. He is also almost to the level of Lugosi, but Lugosi definitely puts it all out there, both in character and in presence.
Yeah. I think, when you mention Renfield, I think it's Dwight Fry, I think his name was, if I remember correctly. One of the first things that I noticed, and I hadn't seen this movie in decades. So I just watched it, over the past few days, and I hadn't seen it in a very long time. Obviously, they're replacing a Renfield character with Harker from the book.
Mhm.
It's Harker in the book that goes to the castle. And I enjoyed it. It wasn't too bad. The villagers, that was their performances were okay. I think one of the better village performances that, and I'm just going to, mention another Dracula movie for a second. I don't know if you've seen it, is the BBC adaptation with Louis Jordan.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, that's a creepy version. When
Okay.
he's now Harker is having the dialogue with the people in the wagon, and he's telling them where he's going, and they can barely speak English. And
Okay.
this woman is trying to convey to him in this very broken English, like not to go there. So yeah, that was okay. He gets to the castle, and this is what I picked up on that I had never noticed before. How small he was in
Mm.
that entryway to the castle. I mean, that entry room, those ceilings must have been 30 feet high.
Yep.
And he is just insignificantly small. And you just get he's just going to be consumed by this feeling, because us knowing, not as first time viewers, but as, people who've, understood the story now for almost a century, that,
Right.
he's going to get eaten.
Yeah. It hammers home the fact that he's entering into something that he doesn't expect. Like he thinks like, oh, I'm just here to do, a couple of lawyerly things to get this guy to come to England. And walking into that castle, it's like, there's something much bigger going on and you have no clue.
Yeah.
You're about to be consumed by the evil and the dark that you're walking into.
Yeah, and Lugosi has a line where there's that scene where they sort of split the scene, and at one point he's on one side of the spider web, and then and then he makes it through the other side. You never see, because they don't have the special effects, I guess, at the time to make that happen. But Lugosi has a line about the spider and the unworthy fly.
Yep. Yep.
Unworthy
and then
fly.
it's brought home because he starts eating flies, trying to simulate what his then master is doing to him.
And that's what I really loved. was that Lugosi, and it was in the documentary too. Lugosi was not a romantic character. I mean, maybe there was some sort of, and they talked about it, a corresponding sort of sex appeal, that, with the ladies, and,
Yeah,
there's always that
it's
sort of
it's a
tumbling,
sexual character. It's not romantic.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
mean,
it's very much so a sexual character. That from because it was pre-code. So every filmmaker was just shoving as much sex into it as you could without scaring people, but there was no censorship code. So yeah, that was definitely the undercurrent in that character.
it was an undercurrent, but I mean, it wasn't like today's where he's whining and dining.
Mhm.
Or he's ballroom dancing, or he's got a part-time job working in a museum or something. He's just hanging out. He's been bored for 5 centuries. I might as well get a job while I'm laying around here, that kind of thing. I mean, they mentioned that Dracula is, from the book, a decrepit old man.
Mhm.
His job is to eat you so that he can become young again, which
Right.
they don't go through in this book. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, they took a lot of liberties from the book. I find it interesting that the play and later the movie is sort of an adaptation of the book because the book was presented and from many different perspectives, as if you were going through all the evidence for a crime or whatever. It wasn't really a novel. A lot of people who never read the book never really get this. It's a lot like uh, World War Z, where you're going through the evidence
yeah.
afterwards, which I found very interesting. But then, of course, they had to squeeze all that information into some kind of narrative. So they took the play format and put it on film, and had to change a bunch of things.
And yeah, I mean, everything in the book is implied. You, the reader, understand what's happening, but these mysterious things just keep happening. And I just thought that was a really fantastic way to put it across.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, just really good stuff. There was that feeling that the house. I mean, I'm still sort of stuck on the castle, but that the house itself was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like living things did, like living people didn't live there. It was like you go to an old abandoned house, and there'd always be one in your neighborhood when you were kids, and no one lived there anymore, and it was kind of gutted or something, and it was like that.
But it has a presence anyway. You could think of it as being the house being undead because everyone knows there's something up with that house, and in your mind, something's alive there, even though everything's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Very creepy, very effective, still effective. Still holding up.
I gotta say, that's one thing I miss from this modern world. When I was growing up, we still had abandoned houses. Like there was
Sure.
the haunted house in the neighborhood. You don't have that in very many places anymore.
The haunted condo. It doesn't really come across the same way. But I think a block or two from my house in my parents' house in Mullica, we had a house that had caught fire.
Uh-huh.
It was just ruined. But you could still, go in there and climb the stairs, and there's creeping sounds and things falling and things like that. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. I haven't really. You and I have probably seen many different adaptations of Dracula, but I've never had that feeling.
Okay.
That feeling. I'm trying to think of
any other adaptation besides this one.
where, yeah, like the house was alive, or the house was dead. That sense of scale.
Yep.
That kind of thing. I noticed that. I've seen the Hammers and Coppola's and the BBC's, and I've never actually seen a Nosferatu, the original. I have a copy of Herzog's remake with Klaus Kinski. Wow, that's a rough movie. But yeah, I've never seen that. I mean, maybe you've seen something different.
Have you seen the Willem Dafoe? Just as an aside, have you seen the Willem Dafoe movie, the making of that?
Shadow of the Vampire. Yeah, that's a great movie.
Another thing in my research that I never noticed, and I probably should have because I've seen the Nosferatu version. They used to show silent movies in Red Bank, and they would hire a local band called Molding Rotten Flesh to come and play the music live as the silent film would go on. So we saw
that's awesome.
Nosferatu and a bunch of the classics with this great band doing music. But there's that scene in both the Lugosi film and in Nosferatu, where Harker slash Renfield cuts his finger, and Dracula is like, "Oh, I got to get some of that," and it was never in the book. This is something that Nosferatu made up, and then the Lugosi film director Browning stole that directly and was like, "Yeah, I'm putting that in my flick."
Well, I think they said they had to take a lot of liberties because there were budgeting issues.
Uh-huh.
There were budgeting issues. They wanted to go more directly from Stoker's novel, but there were money problems. So, like you said, they just brought everything directly from the stage,
Sure.
into that. So, I mean, I'm sure they got a more short, that would have been something. That would have been something to see, Lugosi do it directly from the book.
Yeah, I think they blew all their money on the opening scene in the castle and also the ghost ship pulling up into England. Because right after that, you're in the sanitarium and it's pretty much like 4 rooms and a balcony, and that's it. That's all you get to see from then on.
Yeah. I've always said that that scene in the book, especially, from the Demeter, from the ship, could have been its own movie. I would always love to have seen someone just make a movie of that.
Okay.
And it ending with Dracula sort of stepping off the boat and everyone's dead and he's made it to England. And you could have just left that there.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that would be a creepy as fuck, story on its own. And somebody came close to it with this Netflix Dracula.
Yeah.
Yeah, they made. I mean, they took enormous liberties with it, but I mean, somebody made a whole episode of just the ship.
Yep. Yeah, I'm up to the Van Helsing sister or granddaughter.
Okay.
That whole period. I won't spoil it for anybody, but
yeah. Dracula lives, man. Dracula lives. That's all we're saying.
I think, was it Dracula 2000 or maybe Dracula in Space, where they put Dracula in a spaceship, and I thought that was kind of sort of similar to the trip on the boat.
No, I never saw that. I have the those Wes Craven Draculas, the Dracula 2000, and I think there's 3000, and then there's some other one where Rutger Hauer plays Dracula.
Right. It's probably not that series. I can't remember. I vaguely remember it from the mid 90s, but there was a film with Dracula being in a spaceship. So take that for what you will.
Okay. That kind of blew my mind, actually. There was something I wanted to say, but I've lost my train of thought with Dracula in space. Okay. Another thing. Well, Lugosi's performance is just it's so minimalist in my estimation. I mean, you could be the alpha, but I guess if you have to announce that you are the alpha, then you're not the alpha. You know what I mean? But he does almost nothing, and right. Just everything just grinds to a halt, which I think is a real sign. He's a real G. We would say that nowadays. He's a real fucking gangster. Lugosi he just walked in the room they did a similar thing, although it didn't have the same effect with Karloff and the Mummy, with the eyes.
Uh-huh.
And you were just talking about that, when Renfield, cuts his finger, but I mean the eye contact that he just kind of stares you down like, yeah, I'm gonna eat you, and you're not gonna be able to do anything, or like you just walk in the room, I'm just gonna fuck every woman in this room, and there's nothing you're gonna be able to do about it.
Yep.
Without saying anything.
That's the character, man, and he nails it. And like you were saying before about overacting, I think the extreme opposite of his minimal acting but superb presence is the caretaker and the maid from the asylum, which are there for comic relief, but holy cow, can you overdo the accent of the Cockney janitor? Come on, dude. Did no one say, hey, tone that one down just a hair?
I related to that guy that listening to Renfield rant about rats, where he starts going into that scene about thousands of the millions of rats. And he's just looking at this guy like, put this fucking guy back in his room, please. It's like lock the door. Don't ever let him out. I got shit to do. I can't sit here and listen to this, crazy bastard, all day. But I mean, just to hop, skip, and jump here for a second. One of the things, that I remember them saying from the doc was that there was a possibility that Chaney Sr. Possibly could have been cast.
Yeah, they wanted him desperately just because he was in the system. I think the problem with Lugosi, and that haunted him throughout his career, was his accent, and he really wasn't anyone's first choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They wanted a name, but he made his name with this film.
He never shook it.
No, he never shook that film, and that's a tragic sort of downward spiral, because he was typecast because of his accent, his Hungarian accent, to playing vampires and also, weirdly enough, sheiks and Arabs. That I guess Hungarian accent translated to sheiks and Arabs for him.
I haven't gotten around to it yet. I probably will. I don't know if I'm going to go in the next episode with another Universal film, but he is the gypsy and the Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who bites Lon Chaney Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he went back to, he played a gypsy in the very, 10 years later.
Yep.
He never got out of the horror circle. A lot like Christopher Lee.
I don't know. Christopher Lee, though, he sort of broke out when he was 70. He became respected then, and he started getting all these roles. But I don't know. He maintained his dignity and did his best work, even in the worst of those Christopher Lee Dracula movies, where Bela Lugosi just sort of went downward and more downward and more downward into heroin addiction and just despair.
Yeah, I remember that from Ed Wood.
Oh yeah.
Seeing Landau play Lugosi, and it's very tragic.
Yeah, that was his rock bottom. But I think he kept fighting for respect in the studio system, and he kept getting handed these worse roles and worse roles and worse roles. I don't think he lived up to the challenge the way that Christopher Lee did, because Christopher Lee always maintained his dignity, and I guess Bela Lugosi just sort of started getting more and more frustrated, and then just gave up and went to B movies.
I have quite a few of those Hammer Dracula flicks.
Me too.
And a buddy of mine, Ryan, he was telling me the other day that there are a couple of them towards the end where he really has no lines.
Mm.
He has no lines in the movie, but they said it was, Ryan told me it was because he refused to say them. Like he was kind of burnt out, and he said, "This is stupid. Like I'm not repeating these lines. I'll give you a performance, but I'm not saying whatever it is." And I mean, it's still Christopher Lee.
Mm-hmm.
It's still Christopher Lee playing Dracula. He's still, on the scary side, with that kind of shit. So, I guess he just kind of embraced it, and rolled with it. And hey, I've got a payday, and I'm still, I can pay my bills, and hey, how bad is it? I'm starring in a movie.
Yeah, exactly. For a British guy coming out of World War I and then World War II with a ruined economy, it was different than being in Hollywood, where Lugosi was coming from Europe. Lugosi would think like, I'm supposed to be, bigger than I am. And he was always dogged by, Lon Chaney and living in the shadow of Boris Karloff.
Yeah. It's a shame. It's It's just a matter of perspective, I guess,
Yeah, I think they didn't have the system of conventions in the 50s like they do now, which probably would have given him some direction, or at least something to hold on to, because after 1957, when Universal put all these movies out on television, that started the whole monster craze, and he could have worked that monster craze, but instead I think he looked at it as a millstone around his neck, instead of, hey, I can work with this.
I mean, he would have been revered.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he would have been revered, you know. I mean, but by today's standards, he'd be like the highlight of all the cons, and you know, like,
That's what I'm saying. He would
yeah,
be Peter Mayhew
yeah,
or
yeah, you know,
David Prowse, of
that's
his
the $100, you know, that's the $100 room. On top of the ticket, you still got to pay $100 to get in to meet that guy. You know, and
hmm
people would be lined up around the block to do it.
Heck yes.
You know, because I mean, coming back to the minimalism, I mean, he's just, you know, Dracula does two, you know, it's like a shark, you know, they say in Jaws, you know, all he does is swim and eat,
Right.
swim and eat. So, I mean, just to keep it so, you know, to keep that baseline, you know, he really knocked it out of the park. Um,
And the way that he comes into a room with Harker and Van Helsing and Mina, and he's got his tuxedo on. He still walks in swinging his dick
yeah,
when they're having just normal conversations, and they have to resort to the trickery of, oh, look at his cigarette box. I gotcha, before he loses it. The whole time that he's just like there, he is just sort of the guy that owns the room.
yeah. Holy shit! Yeah, I forgot about it. You know, I didn't like the guy who played Van Helsing.
No.
No, he's also the foil in the Mummy. He's the occult foil in the Mummy. He's a little smug, you know.
Well, that's the character, though.
I suppose so. You know, you're playing for the time, and you know,
At the time, the intellectual was seen as the sort of egghead, the detached sort of intellectual philosopher doctor. But I like the heroic action Van Helsing's. The guy that knows what to do.
Peter
And
Cushing.
yeah, absolutely.
Peter Cushing was a legit Van Helsing, man. I mean, he just didn't screw around, and he was a little more able-bodied. I mean, this guy looked like if you looked at him wrong, he was going to fall over.
Yes.
He was so damn old. You
Yeah.
know, I don't understand why. And I thought about this. There's that one scene where Dracula tries to hypnotize him with the hand. You know, all he had to do was like take 3 steps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just break the guy's neck or something like that. But
Right. Why he didn't? He was the battle of the minds between Dracula and Van Helsing, and then Van Helsing again goes with the trickery and pulls the crucifix out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
Go ahead.
that's all I got.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if you ever read it. There's a great book. It's a series of books called Anno Dracula. Have you ever heard of it?
Hmm.
By this guy Kim Newman, or it might be a woman, Kim Newman. I'm not sure, but she writes these books that are parallels to Stoker's novel. And in the first one, Dracula arrives in London, and he kills Lucy Westerner.
Mm-hmm.
And then Harker and all the men descend on Dracula to save Mina. But in it, this is where it goes off the rails. These people have no idea like who Dracula actually is and how powerful he is. So like in one fell swoop, he kills Jonathan Harker. He kills Quincy Morris. Van Helsing manages to do something to hurt him, but it's minimal. But Dracula, just out of spite, like kidnaps him. And you never hear from Van Helsing again. And then like after some time, his head just appears on a spike. He turns Mina into a vampire. And so essentially Dracula wins, and he starts to, and so that's how the book begins. It begins with this premise that Dracula has won and has started to spread vampirism throughout Western Europe, which was his goal all along.
Right. So he's rewriting the movie and going from there.
Yeah. Yeah. If you ever get a chance, it's fantastic books.
Okay.
Fantastic books.
All right. That sounds good.
I don't know. I mean, I say that to say this because I know that it would have been perfectly fine if he had just schwacked everybody.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of get to the point where you're hoping he will. Like, you're rooting for this undead evil monster because the rest of them are just so damn annoying.
Yeah, they are.
I don't like the scene where he goes out, because they open up the coffin and there's a lot of hoo-haing going on and before he gets the stake and actually takes him out. And you're like, well, what's going on? Is he not going to wake up? Can he not fight back? That's something that I never really dug. And then they turn away. Of course, they turn away, and you just hear him whacking the spike.
Yeah.
You know, the implied violence. You can put all the sex you want on the screen, but the violence has got to be off to the side.
And they never resolved the Lucy issue.
Right.
Lucy's just still out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is something they always made a point of resolving. I mean, maybe they learned from the film. They're like, yeah, maybe we should have tied off that loose end there.
This is true. I don't know whatever happens to her unless she, shows up in another one of those, like the Spanish Dracula.
Have you seen that?
Haven't sat through the whole thing. No.
Okay.
No. There's a lot of the bonus materials I just did not bother with. I just dig the film with the Philip Glass soundtrack.
I saw it with the original score. I didn't see it with the Glass soundtrack, but they said that I saw in the doc that they said, well, what would happen is Lugosi and that Browning would film during the day, and then the Spanish cast would come in at night. It's the same set.
Huh.
It's the same set, except it's in Spanish. Same set and everything, but they said in many ways it may even be a little bit better. Not in terms of the vampire performance, but just in terms of the overall film.
Yeah, they're probably not bound to what they did on stage and trying to recreate the stage performance.
And plus, I hate to say it, but the Spanish may be a little more lively than the stuffy British, kind of counterpart, that kind of thing. There's a little more,
I can see that.
A little going on there.
I find it interesting that Browning went right from Dracula, which is this understated thing, anchored by this great performance by this one guy, and then he goes full on exploitation, and his next movie is just got freaks. So I don't know what Browning was trying to do, what he was trying to say. Like he went from understated to, hey, let's get these pinheads and these amputees and throw them on the screen.
I've never actually seen that. Is it worthwhile?
Yes, it's worthwhile, and it moves. It's still to this day disturbing. I don't know if you ever saw it. Crispin Glover did a film where all of his actors were mentally and physically challenged, and it was the same sort of reaction, except that you're watching a modern film doing this. And Crispin Glover goes through the whole thing of, I'm not exploiting these people, they're actors. And I guess that was Browning's thing too. But the Browning movies, actually, the Freaks is actually a really good film to see, because it's referenced so many times throughout the history of horror films that it's worth seeing. It's even referenced by the Ramones,
I think I remember something. I remember back in the days, Bravo used to have around Halloween time, the 100 Scariest Movies.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that, it was definitely, I think it was in the top 30 or something like that. So, okay, maybe we'll get around to it one of these days.
It sort of disappeared as pop PC culture sort of got more prevalent.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
But yeah, that's the two things I do every Halloween. I have to read something by Edgar Allan Poe, and I have to watch one of the Universal horror movies.
Okay.
So yeah.
One of the movies I never got around to, just to get off Dracula for a second, is Creature from the Black Lagoon. Never saw it.
Oh God, then do it. We'll talk.
Okay. I'll have to find a way to. I'll have to get a copy. I don't have a copy. I have for Universal. I have Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
Never got the Creature. I think that's the fifth. That's the fifth finger. That's the thumb, I guess, or something.
The Creature's in there, and again, pretty good movie. It's a little B-ish. The suit's a little weird, but it's still. It belongs in the pantheon with the other four.
Okay.
Now, what you have to see though is Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Lugosi doing the vampire thing, knowing that it's funny and it's taking the piss, but at the same time, working it the same way he did in 1931. So this is 10 years later.
Yeah, yeah. There's also a movie. I think it's part of the Dracula house, the Dracula box set called House of Dracula,
Mhm.
where John Carradine is playing Dracula, and Lon Chaney
Okay.
is there as Talbot.
Mhm.
They're both trying to resolve. Dracula is actually trying to. I can't remember if he's trying to die or if he's trying to resolve his issue medically or something like that. And
Hmm.
so Talbot is there for seeing the same doctor. And of course, it just it goes right off the rails. So, I mean, we go from here, and then I guess we go into Hammer, which has a little. I don't want to get stuck talking about Hammer because we'll be here all day. But I mean,
Save it for the next episode, but
yeah. There's plenty to discuss. But you move into there, and then those types of movies, Frankenstein with Cushing and Lee, and same with Dracula, and then Oliver Reed's Curse of the Werewolf, which is just it still freaks me out to this day. That
all
movie.
right, where do you stand on Frank Langella's 70s uh uh shag haircut
With
Dracula?
his shirt, open like this. Okay, yeah, that's where I stand with it.
All right.
He was much better as an old man in the Ninth Gate. That's let's keep it at that. Yeah, I mean, and the same with them. Jack Palance did one.
Oh yeah.
And
That's
it's the
true.
same thing. Like I tried to watch it. It was on Amazon one time, and I'm like, why is Dracula making out with this woman in the middle of a field? I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
And then the ultimate was, Coppola's.
Yeah.
Where he's just they're ballroom dancing in candlelight. And you're like, what the hell are you doing, man? Like that movie could have been everything.
Yeah.
And
But
I don't know
remakes
what the hell he
never
was
are, man.
smoking, huh?
Remakes never are. Just like De Niro's Frankenstein.
I like De Niro's Frankenstein.
Oh, geez.
I actually have both of those in a box set. It's
Okay.
Stoker's Dracula and Shelley's Frankenstein. It's about as I mean, does it rate with what Karloff was doing? No,
Yep.
no, it doesn't rate with what Karloff was doing. But it was loyal to the book,
Uh-huh.
and I thought they were good performances. Was it? I mean, Frankenstein's kind of an underrated. The vampires always get the especially today, vampires get all the, the big money, and I'm still dying for I'm still dying for the epic werewolf film that we never get. The closest we got, I think, was American Werewolf, and that was kind of a comedy.
Yeah, that's true.
And I didn't like The Howling.
The first Underworld was good. The Howling was good as a book.
Yeah, it
There's
was. I remember that, Gary
scene in
Brandman.
there where he writes about hunters being out in the woods and suddenly being chased by werewolves. That was scared the pants off of me because I was hunting back then. I was
Okay.
deer hunting with my dad back then, and having read that, it was pretty good.
I think one of my favorites is when it comes to werewolves, Dog Soldiers, obviously.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Uh-uh.
Oh, dear, you got to get to it, man.
Okay.
You
Well,
gotta
we'll do an
come
episode.
down here, man. Come on over. We'll get some 6-packs and some pizzas, and we'll sit down and watch some horror flicks. I got this whole house here. I got company coming in and out. Come on over sometime.
Let's do that. We got to
Yeah.
have a horror movie night.
Yeah, sounds good.
You ever see the hippie Dracula? It's called
No.
Death Master.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Just rewatched it, and it's actually funny to watch now.
Really?
Yeah,
And then there was what was the one called Count Yorga, vampire? I
yeah.
think that was the one where Dracula was in space. It was Count Yorga, though, wasn't it?
I don't know. The hippie vampire Death Master is the sequel to Count Yorga, where Yorga shows up among a California hippie commune and wreaks havoc.
One of these days, I'm going to try to work up the stomach to watch Blackula. I've never.
I've caught it here and there, but I've never actually watched it all the way through. That would be an interesting thing to watch now.
Yeah, I mean, you were the one I think who told me. I was reading a book a long time. It was like Garcia Marquez. I'm like, this fucking book is just murdering me. And you're just like, throw that fucking thing against the wall. You're like,
Uh,
life's too short. Jesus Christ. So I try to, hold that with me now. So if I'm just not enjoying something, I'm like, fuck this. I'm not
yeah.
doing that. And so, like,
I did that with The Great Gatsby. I was like, fuck this book.
oh, I didn't understand that movie, that book. I didn't understand.
There's not much to understand. It's rich people bad. They're criminals. You know,
That what it was? Okay.
that's all I got out of it. It was a long way around to say it, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I suppose that was it. I really don't remember that much about it, and I didn't want to see DiCaprio screaming again. Playing Gatsby as the tortured billionaire
Yeah.
or whatever.
All right,
Okay,
man.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I gotta go eat dinner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hopefully, we got enough for your episode.
yeah, yeah. I think we're good. If it's up to you, I mean, I'm just gonna let it run like this.
Okay, that
I
sounds
think
good.
that's authentic. Authentic, just conversation and two people rapping.
Cool, man.
I would just ask you one more question.
Okay.
How do you think it rates overall? Is it the number one?
For me, it's not the number one, but it is the template that all other vampire movies were created from. It wrote the rules that all the other movies added to and or broke.
It was the
So
first. Yeah, it was the
it's up
first.
there. As a movie overall, it doesn't hold up for me as well as Frankenstein.
Okay,
If we're rating it against other Universal films, I think Frankenstein is the better film overall.
I think you're right.
But the performance is not there because he's hidden behind the makeup. So it was sort of a special effects movie, whereas Dracula is all about Lugosi just being the swinging dick.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, before we break, I just want to say real quick to the audience out there, I want to thank a former student of mine. Her name is Sama Matkari, and she's just an awesome person. I've known her, I think, oh Jesus, probably going on 8, almost 10 years now. That's how long it's been. I met her overseas when I was working over there, and she was kind enough. I contacted her. I told her I was doing this podcast, and she kind of volunteered to do some graphics work for the website on Mixcloud. And she was kind enough to put that work up there. She's just a great person. And if you'd like to check out more of her work, you can find her on Sama Matkari. That's SAMAMATKARI.wixsite, WIXSITE.com/portfolio. And you can also catch her on Instagram at Artie Knight, ARTYNIGHT. I just want to thank again my good buddy Bill Bengle here for joining me here. Bill, you've got a show on Mixcloud. Do you want to let people know when they can hear you and if your tracks are available to listen to at any time?
Yeah, I just do a radio show at WMCX, the Monmouth University radio station. It's live Tuesdays 4 to 6, but every episode is up on Mixcloud. Just go to mixcloud.com/Gobstopper67 or follow me at Instagram at Gobstopper67. The show is the Neverlasting Gobstopper since 1992, still going strong.
I've been, Bill's been turning me on to great music since 1987, so I see no reason why that should stop now. So I suggest you check that out. Bill, man, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming out. And, you got to get out here so we can sit down and drink some beers and watch some horror. And I'd love to have you on the show again next time you're ready.
It's always a good time. I can't wait to come back.
All right, brother. You take care of yourself. Have a good one.